As you know, the supervisor is really the key in an effective drug prevention program. You can look all over for who can be the most responsible. You can try to determine whether or not you've got a good employer up here that writes a good policy, but the key is an effective program is built right around the responsibility of the average supervisor. Their awareness, their alertness, and their responsibility are going to be the key to whether we have an effective drug prevention program. One of the real keys is understanding how physical and mental impairment can be signs of an abuser in the workplace. Pre-employment testing, for example, can check a person to see whether or not they're doing certain drugs at a given time before they come into the workplace. But as we all know, someone can be free of drug abuse at 9 o'clock in the morning and certainly be impaired by that evening and be at work the next morning. The real key is not to determine whether somebody has done drugs or has abused drugs in the past. What you want to know is someone impaired and causing you a problem in the workplace? Are they a danger to me? Are they a danger to themselves? Are they a danger to the other people around them? The real key to this is to understand what it means by sign and symptom. What are the signs and symptoms of drug abuse? You know, one of the things I've discovered in talking to supervisors across America is that so many of these supervisors are more afraid of being wrong than they are responsible to be right. They're more afraid of making the wrong determination, the wrong detection, making the wrong statement, than they are responsible to make that right statement. And one of the things that's interesting is when I ask them why they're afraid, they'll say, because I really don't know what those signs are. I'm really not sure about what those signs are. And what if it's just my opinion? Well, let me say to you, your opinion counts. Your opinion as a prudent person who is making a value or reasonable judgment about behavior is the basis of supervision. And it's the very basis of just cause or reasonable suspicion testing. But how can I trust sign and symptom? How can I trust that those signs and those symptoms are chemically induced? Well, let me see if I can make it simple. When you put drugs in your body, one of the key parts of the body that is impacted is the brain. The drugs go into the bloodstream or into the body, and they go to the brain. They do their work on the brain. Now, let me ask you, have you ever had someone come into the workplace who was angry? How did you know that? By the way they walked, right? By the way they acted, by the way they looked. Did you ever see someone come in who was sad? And you can tell it by the way that they walk, the slumped shoulders, the head down, all of these physical characteristics of the way they acted that gave you a sign that there was a mood change in this person. Now, that change in behavior was created by a change in the chemical of the brain. You see, we've heard all along, drugs cause mood alteration. Well, where's your mood? Right here. Your mood is your mind. There is no such thing as mood alteration. It is mind alteration. And where there is mind alteration, there is behavioral change. When I change the chemicals in the brain and I alter the way they impact on my body, I will act differently. Now, if I'm doing the chemical change, if I'm telling a funny story and everybody's laughing and it's a big time and I'm putting the chemical in. If I think sad thoughts, if I think dangerous thoughts, then I'm kind of creating my own chemical. And therefore, if I'm doing something or thinking something that is not appropriate and someone says you need to change your behavior or you're going to get fired, I'm probably going to take control of that. I'll probably make the decision I'm going to change my behavior. I'm going to think differently now because I could be in bad trouble. But what if it's not my control of the chemical? What if the chemical, which has been introduced to my brain, is controlling that behavior? I can't change that behavior. Mood alteration is mind alteration. And when the drug controls the brain, the drug controls the body. Thereby, unless you are working aliens from other planets, if these are human being bodies that you're dealing with in the workplace, these chemical compounds that we know of that create the problem will create the same behavior in every person. You cannot take cocaine and not be keyed up. You cannot smoke marijuana and not feel a little bit laid back. You cannot do heroin and expect to feel hyper, because those drugs work and they do their job on the body every time. The other thing is, people would say, well, I mean, maybe they do drugs once. How do I catch them? Maybe they've never done them before. Probably won't catch them. Probably won't. I mean, the chances of catching somebody the first time they do drugs, the first time they're impaired, it's pretty slim. The chances are that you're not going to catch that person. But you know what happens when you do drugs? It takes more of the drug to get the same high. It's called tolerance and progression. Tolerance and progression. The tolerance causes me to need more of the chemical to reach the same level of high. Therefore, I reach a place where if I'm doing certain drugs, it's really ridiculous for me to try to buy that much of that drug. I'd have to have a suitcase full of it to reach the high I want to reach. So what do? I progress to a higher drug. That's why the person who's doing codeine would say, well, I'd never shoot up with heroin. Just wait. Just wait. It won't be long and you'll be finding another way to inject the drug. Because what happens is the tolerance builds up. You still need the high. Your body's requiring it. It's demanding it. The drug is now in control of you. You need more of the drug. But guess what else happens? The signs and symptoms increase. Where they were lower at a time because you weren't using that much chemical and they really weren't that extreme. Now then, it's becoming more and more of your body's chemistry and more your actions are out of your control. And while you may not recognize the change as the user, people around you are really seeing the difference. No, listen. As a supervisor, be assured the signs and symptoms of substance abuse will appear. You will know them when they occur. You don't have to go snooping for them. You don't have to go hunting for them. The truth is, reasonable suspicion or just cause is impacted by the behavior an employee in a workplace. Well, how do I know if he's acting different? Because you know how he acts normally. Okay? One of the real keys to sign and symptom is that everyone has a normal. I mean, you've been around some people that think of somebody you've known for 20 years. Have they always kind of been the same kind of person? I mean, would you kind of say that's kind of the way they are? Think of the individual you've worked with for 5 years or 10 years, and when you go in, you expect them to act a certain way. As a matter of fact, some of you would even watch this videotape, go home and tell your wife or husband, you ought to have been able to listen to the wonderful, handsome, charming, debonair man that I saw on the screen. Proper observation, I may say. Truth being, you may interpret even who I am, because you would feel comfortable in saying, if I met you somewhere, I would expect you to be. It's not hard to set baseline, folks. Baseline is something we set on people around us. But you know what happens? All of a sudden, this person comes in one day and they are, quote, not themselves. Not themselves. Now, we want to know why. What's wrong? Especially close friends, especially coworkers who are close. We want to know what's wrong. We want to talk to them about what it is that's causing this change. And we find out maybe their dog died last night. Does that explain it? Might do it. And as we talk to them, they kind of come out of it. And we see what was wrong. But all of a sudden, we start seeing them coming in like this. There's nothing to explain it. And their baseline behavior has changed. They're now quite different than what they were before, and they're not interacting with people as they used to interact. And all of a sudden, we begin to recognize they're not able to do what they could do before either. You see, you can trust signs and symptoms because drugs will do their job. They will do their job. The cocaine will create the high. The heroin will create the low. The depressant will work. The marijuana will make you stupid. The issue is, can you see it? And the answer is yes. Being alert to these things. What we're talking about is just cause or reasonable suspicion. Now, we can pre-employment test in a workplace. In some institutions, they'll test you with body fluid testing and maybe even alcohol testing before you come in. I don't know that that keeps the workplace clean, because anybody can start doing those drugs anytime after they get on the job. So some people impose random. You don't know when we're coming? We're going to put that bottle on your desk. You don't know when we're coming? And a lot of people feel like that's a way to keep the deterrent level high. You never know when it's coming, therefore you won't do drugs at work. But I'm going to tell you, there's a lot of users and abusers who know the systems for random. And they work their way around it. They work their way, or they'll run that risk because that drug is so special. They're not afraid of it. And so, can we have drugs at work even though we drug test? Yes. I mean, easily we can have that. What's the real key? Just cause or reasonable suspicion testing. Just cause or reasonable suspicion depends upon you as a frontline supervisor and management being aware and alert to the signs and behaviors of your people so that you can step in when somebody is endangering the workplace. What are what's the basic definition of just cause or reasonable suspicion? It is this. Just cause or reasonable suspicion is a suspicion or cause based upon reasonable facts. A suspicion or cause based upon reasonable facts sufficient to lead a prudent person to conclude that a person has performed a particular act or is impaired. Several little elements of this. A suspicion, a question, or a cause, a happening, an event that would lead you, a prudent person. You say, well, how do I know if I'm a prudent person? They gave you the job, which means that basically they've already decided that you're a fairly intelligent, level-headed individual. This doesn't mean that you have to be a psychologist. If it meant psychologist, it'd say psychologist. If it meant sociologist, it'd say sociologist. It says reasonable suspicion is just an action that happens that causes a basically level-headed, wise person to come to a conclusion that the person's doing that has a problem or is impaired or even just that they did it. Let me give you an example. One of the keys to just cause or reasonable suspicion testing or signs and symptoms is whether somebody is drunk. That's a horrible term I'm going to teach you later. Drunk. What is drunk? Drunk is intoxicated. Drunk is behavior. But what's part of the drunken state? It's staggering. Okay? Now watch me. Would anybody have a problem interpreting that as staggering? Fairly simple, okay? It's not hard to tell when somebody's staggering. Is it hard to tell when somebody's speech slurs? Is it hard to tell when somebody can't stay awake on the job? Is it hard to tell? Are these hard things to tell? They're not. The issue is what's behind this, what's causing this, what's going on with this right now. Here's some of the keys. Number one, if you're going to do just cause or reasonable suspicion, you have to ask the question, is there an immediate impairment? Is something going on right now? Is there an immediate impairment? Why do you want to know if there's an immediate impairment? You want to know if there's an immediate impairment because if you send somebody to testing because of what you think of today that they did yesterday, what kind of a drug test are we going to get back? A normal. Okay? I mean, you can't go to bed that night and go, wow, oh, I wish I'd thought of this. I'll test that guy first thing in the morning. I know he was impaired. He won't be then. Because in less than 48 hours, most of those drugs are going to wash on out of his system, especially at the levels that they can come back and prove adequate, and you're going to be wrong. You've got to get people to testing in about 4 hours, up to 32 hours for drugs, but especially 4 hours for alcohol, which has 64% of the problem in the workplace. So you need to be sure that there is an immediate impairment if you're going to be ready to send somebody for a just cause urine test or body fluid test. An accident may be a just cause situation. There's an accident in the workplace, someone is injured, and check your policy. Because when you check your policy, all of a sudden you discover, my policy says anytime there's an accident, these people should be tested. And whatever your policy says, you need to act on. Because the truth is, you may save your company literally tens of thousands of dollars by showing that this person was under the influence of alcohol or other drugs when they did that. If you don't send them for that test and that information's not back, guess who's next in the news? So you better be aware when just cause testing is required for accident. You should also recognize that you should be able, under just cause testing, to find out if that impairment or that action, that behavior, could be the result of alcohol or other drugs. Now we're down to what is sign and symptom of drug abuse. In other words, you're saying, is there an impairment? Number two, could this impairment be alcohol or the drug abuse? Well, you need to know those signs and symptoms. We're going to talk about those in a little bit. The next question you have to ask is, are the facts reliable? Are the facts reliable? Now, we're going to have a special session on documentation. We'll talk a little more about this. But the real key to this is, did you see this with your own eyes, or do you know that the person who witnessed it is a very viable witness? Are they an individual that is reliable themselves, and did they have firsthand information? Is there any third-party witness? You've got to make sure that the facts are reliable facts before you ask this person to participate in such testing. You need to ask yourself this question: are the facts capable of explanation? Can I explain what's going on here? Now, the next one will answer that. Are the facts capable of documentation? Now, I will tell you right now, if you can write it down, you can explain it. If you can just write it down, you can explain it. If you can't write it down and you don't write it down, everybody's in trouble anyway. Because when this thing comes back and they ask for that paperwork that does explain it and you don't have it, you've done the company another disservice. And now, guess who's next in the news? You see, the issue is not, do you want to do substance abuse prevention? Or would you please do substance abuse prevention? The issue is, you cannot be a supervisor in that role and handle it effectively unless you do substance abuse prevention, because you are the protecting link for this company. So your role there is very important. Is the impairment current? Are the signs that could be substance abuse signs? Are the facts reliable? And can you explain what's going on? So let's talk about some of these signs. What are some of the classic signs of substance abuse in the workplace? Well, first, let's just look at the general signs. If I do cocaine, and I'm taking cocaine or speed, and that's going into my body, at first I'm kind of down. I'm kind of tired. It's right after lunch. I'm real sleepy. I'm having some real trouble staying awake. I feel like I need a burst of energy. I slide into the restroom there at the plant. I pop me some speed. I do me a little cocaine. When I come out that door, is there such a thing as a mood change here? I'm flying, okay? Lots of energy. You know, hey, man, what happened? You were about dead a while ago. Oh, man, I'm ready now. Let's get after it. Come on, man. Where's that paperwork? Let's type now. Let's get on this. We can get that done by 2 o'clock. Check the guy 2 hours later. Where is he now? He's laying on his desk. This is called mood change. And it happens because the drug is in control of the mood. It's not that he's a little happy, then a little sad. It's that one time you walk up to him and he is absolutely delightful. And the next time, he's biting your head off. And it seems to happen around the same time of day every day. Seems to be like right after he takes his break after lunch. It seems to be located at the same place, the same location. By the way, I'll give you another sign of substance abuse. Most of the time, these people don't want to leave the job they're in. You try to promote them. Oh, no thanks, I'll stay here. No sense me going up there, you go on up there. You go make more money. You go. Why is he doing this? Because he's got everything laid out where he can get to his drug every day. It is, may I say, a little abnormal for people to turn down promotions. Now, if that's abnormal, would you make a note of that? I think you would. I think you should. Rapid change in mood. When people are doing drugs, they take them up and down. I'm not talking about a little change. I'm talking about mood change that happens rapidly. Secondly, change of weight or appetite. When you're doing speed, it's absolutely eating away at your body. It's giving you energy, and it's drawing right off the cells that are already present, which causes dramatic weight loss. If you're doing speed on a regular basis, all of a sudden you just kind of draw up. You start getting very thin, and your body begins to show significant weight loss and loss of appetite. A lot of nervousness is connected to that, because when you're doing speed, there's all that hyper energy that all of a sudden your heart's beating faster, your lungs are pumping harder. Now listen, If my lungs pump harder and my heart beats faster, what else is going to happen to my body? I'm going to sweat. I can just be standing there perspiring like crazy. And guess what? The sweat stinks because it's the chemical coming out the body. With that in my body, you've got someone standing there and you notice that they're just perspiring all the time. There's a lot of energy. They can't seem to stay still. Now, just a little while ago, this person couldn't move. But all of a sudden, they've got, and it's coming through. Guess what it does? When it comes through the skin, it irritates the pores. And when it irritates the pores, they start scratching. It's called the coke bugs. It's like little bugs are crawling all over their skin. And they're scratching all the time. They'll scratch sores into their body. They'll actually have sores from the scarring and the scratching of the chemical coming through their skin. Now, is it strange when someone you've known all your life all of a sudden develops this wild irritation with no excuse? And it's consistently, all of these are signs. You've got some other questions about this. All of a sudden they drop the things out of their pocket on the table or out of their purse. It accidentally spills. And you see tourniquet material, razor blades. I'll give you another one, folks. If you've got marijuana smokers in the plant, isn't it a little strange to you that when those people come back in from outside, they come in a group of 5 or 6, all wearing sunglasses, all laid back, calling each other dude? Because the bottom line is oftentimes you won't see the dilated pupil and the redness of the eyes. You're going to see sunglasses, are you not? And you're going to see a strange sight. 5 men standing in a corner passing around a bottle of Visine. It's not that you're looking just for the obvious, it's the crazy, the odd, the strange. You will also find that these men eat half of the cabinet of food. You go to the vending machine and they've emptied it of all the potato chips and all the munchies, and they've cleaned it out. And they're heading down to somebody else's plant to get more of their food. It's called the munchies. Okay? And they're going to eat, and you say, well, isn't that strange they would eat all of those potato chips at one time, seemingly right after lunch, about 2 hours, and you know we can't get them to do a darn thing. They just won't work at all. As a supervisor, should you take issue with this? Now, what drug am I describing? Marijuana. Marijuana. The issue is that these signs are so very, very clear. Frequent no-shows or absences. If you have someone that you're documenting and all of a sudden they're just gone at 12 o'clock, after 12 o'clock noon, they never make it back on Friday. They just never seem to find their way back to the office. They're absent every Friday afternoon. And they come in on Monday morning, maybe. You get a phone call from that enabling wife. Well, he's ill. Something he ingested over the weekend's giving him trouble. Food poisoning? No. No, you know what it is? We call it hangover. You know what the true term is? He is intoxicated, poisoned. When you have a hangover, it is your brain trying to get rid of the poison inside your head. And that hangover is literally the swelling and the working of your brain trying to get rid of that pain. Now, if you have this guy in the workplace, what's he trying to do? Everybody be quiet. Turn off those lights. Is this what you call a productive employee? Is this the kind of individual you want driving you guys around in the truck? Or would you like to have somebody who the bright lights of the car in front of him from the sunshine glinting off the window aren't going to cause him to lose control because of a bad hit? That is impaired still. And you have that chronically and don't draw attention to it. Number one, you've missed the problem in the workplace. Number two, you're leaving someone in bad danger. Signs and symptoms. Strange contacts. Got people dropping by all the time in the workplace that aren't supposed to be there. Risky behaviors. They're doing things that are totally unnecessary, but seemingly they're doing things that are challenging and dangerous, and they seem to do it on wild binges. They've lost control of this situation. The quality of their work is up and down and up and down. Can you understand that? When I'm on the cocaine, I've got all this energy. I'm producing 12 times as much, but I just fail to put the holes in the right places. Higher output, lower quality. Good sign of speed abuse. Good sign of speed abuse. Lower quality, lower output. Somebody is probably just not able to focus. Can't think. It's very simple, folks. Drugs change the brain. Brain changes behavior. When they do the drugs, the behavior will change. What should you note? Look for absenteeism. Look for on-the-job absenteeism. They're supposed to be in that place. They can't stay there. You're supposed to be doing a job in this location. They just can't. I didn't say won't. I'm going to tell you, you threaten somebody with termination if they don't sit down and do what they're supposed to do. If their brain is working properly, they will sit down and do that. But when they're under the influence of the drug, they can't. And when you add all of this up on what's called a just cause checklist, when you add all of it up and you begin to look, and you see there's lower job efficiency, there's a higher accident rate, there's difficulties in concentrating, their interpersonal skills are falling apart, their communication has become very difficult, you can't talk to them anymore, they're incoherent. All of these signs added up, sporadic work patterns, no initiative anymore, plain abnormal behavior. Okay, I mean just weird stuff they're doing. What are you going to do? You know, one of the things you can do is apply what's called the optic alert. You can apply the eye test. Can I tell you that when someone does drugs in the workplace and those drugs hit the brain, one of the first things that's going to change is the eyes. One of the first things that's going to change, it's the eyes. Because when it hits the optic center of the brain back here, it's going to alter what happens up here. You cannot smoke marijuana without dilating your pupils. That's why you've got to have the shades. That's why you've got to have the sunglasses, because your pupils will not constrict. You cannot smoke marijuana excessively without getting redness around the eye and irritation around the eye. You cannot do inhalants without it beginning to impact the eyes. When you do cocaine, you cannot help but have cocaine cause your eyes to move rapidly side to side. There's going to be what's called rapid eye movement. You'll find that you cannot focus. You'll be looking at somebody and they'll be saying, you know, look at me. And you'll say, I am. And it just doesn't make any sense at all because they can't stop that movement because of the speed. Marijuana is going to cause a droopy lid. When you look at the eye normally, the eye should be up above, the lid should be above the pupil. And the pupil should be basically centered in the eye, and the eyelid resting down on the colored part but not on the pupil. All of a sudden when they do marijuana, the lid drops. When that lid drops, and you see this lid drop, immediately the eye looks different. And they can't change that. They can't open that, as hard as they try. When you do other drugs, the eyes are impacted. The tracking back and forth, the ability to cross the eyes and hold it, all of that goes away. One of the objective tests that you can use when you think that somebody may have a problem is look at the eyes. If their behavior is indicative, check out those eyes. Pupil dilation, lid's response, coloring of the eye, all can give you evidence that will confirm those suspicions before you would have the courage, and I say the courage, to be responsible and send that person to get help, even if the first step is a tough one. Signs and symptoms, you can learn them.